what I'm going to talk to you about is I'm going to sort of imagine a transport journey in the future and the outbound journey. I'm going to be very optimistic, and then I'm going to think about that return journey again. You might say pessimistically or realistically. I'll let you be the judge of that. Because it's not the best vision, not very inspiring, then I'm going to talk about some ideas of how to avoid that, and finally my closing thoughts. So, is that the right button? Like I say, my optimistic outbound journey. And I assume the reason you're here is because you were at the Uber talk earlier. So you've been sold this optimistic outbound journey where you get your app out and you tell it where you want to go. And are you in a hurry, or do you want to save a bit of money? Do you want to sit next to other people, or are you more of an individual, you want your own space? And then this little possibly autonomous pod will turn up and pick some other people up on the way, and the train is running late, but don't worry, because the pod knows that, and it knows how fast you walk, so it's going to get you to your train perfectly on time. And we're being optimistic, so let's imagine we live in a nice countryside setting, and we get the train over to the next town, and look out the window whilst we go. All very nice. But of course I have made some assumptions about what's going to happen in the future for that journey, which we can't rely on. But there are a few certainties about the future that we do know. For example, we'll all be older. And with that, there's a possibility that we'll have developed some sort of impairments. And if we're lucky enough to not consider ourselves disabled at the moment, that may change in the future. So let's think about that journey again, specifically imagining us as older. Now, remember I said we lived in the countryside? Very nice. There hasn't been any development here for a while. There was some proposed, but very vocal group of local residents were quite against the development, and so there's no new houses, and with that, no funding in our local infrastructure. Our train station still doesn't have a toilet. It doesn't have any shelters. We've got to wait in the rain. There's actually steps to get to it. Luckily, I can use steps, but of course, that's not a certainty in the future. So we have our train journey, and then we get back in that little pod. It's really busy, really cramped. It's quite loud. There's lots of people chatting in there. I'm trying to look at my map to follow when I need to get off, but it keeps changing. The route is different to what it was this morning, and I counted my number of stops, and then the number of stops changed, so I nearly missed my stop, and there's no driver there to say, oh, this is your stop. So like I say, I nearly miss it. Luckily, someone spots it. They press the emergency stop button. It jerks to a halt, and everyone's looking at me like, oh, you missed your stop. I get off, and it's not right next to my house. I've got to walk the last little bit, but they've turned the street lights off, so it's quite dark. And I forgot my torch today, so I struggle tripping over the potholes on my final walk back to my house. All in all, the whole thing was quite stressful, and I don't think I'm going to do it again. I think I just invite my friends to my house or something, maybe. And this is the slide that was in the other version of the presentation. So if you can imagine, there's a happy-looking person on the left and a sad person looking on the right. And the happy person used to have lots of travel options, and in this nice futuristic world, they've got even more travel options. But the sad person on the right, who currently doesn't have many travel options, realistically still is going to have few travel options, and comparatively even less to this happy person on the left that you can see. So yeah, a bit of a gloomy picture in which what we could call the travel richer, even richer, and the travel poor, comparatively poorer. But it's not all bad. I have had some ideas of how we can avoid this vision. So I'll go through this, just 3 of them. The first one. So when I pictured my vision, I'm assuming you all pictured it with me, and you probably did that from your own point of view. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. It's the point of view that you know best. But I'm conscious that in our teams that we work in at work, we're designing, planning, funding transport, we're possibly all quite similar. So here's some statistics about my team. On the right, that's the pink dots are where we live, and you can see it. And then the colour mapping on the back is from Zoopla, the cost of houses in Bristol, and you can see we all sort of live in a similar area. We've all got a degree, and we've all got access to a car, which actually isn't very realistic compared to the population for who transport we're providing. So my suggestion would be that we work in teams that actually represent all of the people for whom we're designing transport systems. Equally, sorry, that I updated that version on the right in the later presentation, but you get the idea that I think at the moment we're very good at mapping physical transport gaps. For example, these people live 100 metres away from a bus stop, so of course they're going to catch the bus. And these people are conveniently located next to a train station, so they could use the train for this journey. But is that actually realistic? Do people perceive their travel options the same as we perceive them just looking at a map? Possibly not. There's lots of emotions there that people could think about, or different types of transport. And so my suggestion is that we need to recognise that today's transport offerings do not give everybody the same opportunities. So, assuming we've met those first two suggestions, we've got a nice diverse team of people, and we've mapped perceived gaps in transport rather than physical gaps, we're probably still not going to get all of the opinions and all of the gaps. So my final suggestion is to engage more effectively and more often, sort of thinking about the public consultation. I'm sure we all know that public consultation is very good and very important and we must do it, but do we really believe the value that we could get out of it? And is it often this version on the left where there's hundreds of documents online, and even as people that spend our lives writing these documents, we can't be bothered to read them or know where to find them or look at all the appendices. Maybe there's a better way at which we could publicly engage. There's absolutely loads of charities that have got loads of opinions, and if we just ask them, I'm sure they'd love to share them with us. And we could do that in a more user-friendly format than at the town hall at 3:30 next Thursday. Be there or we won't listen to you. So those are my 3 suggestions. And just to conclude with a very messy slide, sorry, that's from the old version. My 3 ideas of how we can avoid my gloomy reality of travel very rich and travel still quite poor is that we work in teams which represent all the travelling public. We recognise that today's transport options do not give everyone the same opportunities, and finally, better public consultation.